welcome Michael Oshry.
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We're so excited to talk to you today, knowing that the Edmonton mayoral election is coming up on October 18th. And today we want to talk to you a little bit about your leadership style and understand more about your values, just to help inform our community and just lean into our theme this year of powerful influence. So as you know, kind of our vision is to have a world where everyone reaches their full potential. So we do that by advocating for women through different education initiatives and empowerment. But how is that something that you reinforce with your team, and how do you support them in reaching their full potential?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I do appreciate everyone's time, and I'm happy to be here. As far as helping people reach their potential, you know, my background is primarily in the private sector. Besides the 4 years I was on city council, and over that time, you know, I developed a couple of different businesses. One of them turns out to be quite a large company. I've got over 200 people working there, and so part of that is to ensure that everyone shares in the successes. And so, you know, we spent a lot of time at my business, which really is important to me, is to make sure that people can reach their potential and people have room to grow, and people do so. And it's very much a top-down approach. I really feel it's important to lead from the top. And so I did that, and really installing a bunch of I'll say values and morals that really come from the top. So, you know, I'll be a bit of a braggart, which I really don't like doing, but we've won Best Employers of the Year in Canada, top 50 many times. And so, you know, part of it is, again, making sure that people's voices are heard, and it's very important that people feel that they've heard, but in a really authentic way, not just kind of a superficial way. And so, you know, I'm very much of a collaborator and a very good delegator, actually. So my view on a lot of ways that you can lead is to put people in positions where they can succeed, and then kind of clear the way for them and let them succeed. And I very much believe in that. And then giving honest and open feedback. And so I have very specifics on how I do that with sort of one-on-ones with people. But really, it's about instilling a culture that people know that their voices are heard, and that if they need help, they can ask for help. And then the role of a good leader is then to ensure that they get all of the help. And so there's lots of specifics that we've done over the years that I would continue to do is sort of really what I believe in quite strongly.
That's great. I know it's such a big topic for this year. You talked about ensuring that your team gets the help that they need, and mental health is, you know, top of mind for so many people. So when you say you help ensure your team gets the help that they need, what are some of the tactics that you use to do that?
Well, you know, a lot of it is sort of personal relationships. I think you got to find out what people really need. And so if it's sort of practical help, as far as, I don't know, just throwing out, you know, flexible work hours or that sort of thing, you know, there's always ways to work around these sorts of things. And then if it's something, I'll say a bit more important, not important, but deeper, people are having a real challenge with work based on something that's happening in their personal life, or they've got, or something that's happening at work. You know, you've got to be able to have created a culture that people are open and honest and can talk about it, and then giving them the resources to help them as much as possible, and then staying out of the way sometimes, which is also kind of equally, sometimes it's better not only what you do, but also what you don't do. And so, but it really comes down to for me, open and honest communication, and that gets built up over time with trust and having meaningful, authentic conversations with people way in advance of when the you know, the goods are really, the really important stuff needs to get talked about. And so, you know, mental health, you know, that's it's becoming more and more in the forefront, and especially around COVID, a lot of people have had a lot of hard times with it. And it's, I mean, I do know it's hit women specifically harder than most. And, you know, especially women that have to deal with careers and issues at home and kids and all the other things. It really does hit women much harder than it does men. And we've got to make sure that there's resources around the mental health for those people and everybody who needs health. It's not a personality flaw to have you know, challenges with your mental health. It's health, right? And so we've got to make sure that we take it seriously and provide supports that are needed.
Awesome. And you mentioned, it's about learning about the things to do, but also the things not to do. And I agree, those, mistakes that you make, those stick with you and you remember not to do those things. So could you share some of those things that you've learned, in your years of experience that you learned, these are things that I've learned not to do and I won't make those mistakes again?
Well, for sure. One important thing I think is, sometimes people don't want you to give them a solution. They want to find out the solution on their own, or sometimes they just want to hear. They just want someone to listen and feel validated of what their concern is. And so, in the past, I've sort of made the mistake of sometimes kind of jumping the gun a bit and coming up with what I think are the right solutions and saying, look, have you tried this, or you should do this, and all this kind of stuff. And that's sometimes helpful, but very often it's not. Very often people just want to just be heard, and then they want you to think about it. They want you to talk about it and let them figure it out, and sometimes talk about your own experience. So now I kind of talk about, if someone says, look, I'm having a trouble with work with a supervisor, I'm just using a random example here. I would say to them, well, tell me about it. What's going on? How do you feel about it? Get all the much details, and then say, well, when I've had a similar challenge, this is what I've done, or this is the way that I thought. And that's it. And just give a couple of examples of the way that I've done it, and let them determine if that's something that's helpful or not, or changes their perspectives. And so, again, my mistake in the past, which I try not to do now, is to try not give them what I think is the solution. Try to let them figure it out for themselves.
I think a lot of leaders would actually find that statement quite relieving, because I think a lot of people do feel that pressure to have all the solutions, but knowing that your approach has been, be there to support your team and listen and help them get to that solution. And that was actually a more strategic approach. I think that could be, music to a lot of people's ears.
Yeah, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Typically, that's, if you think you are, you're not. And you don't have to have all the answers, and it's best to, and you don't know the background of what's really going on more than what the person has said, and they might have left some things out on purpose or not on purpose, and you don't know what people are thinking in their own mind, of course, and so you don't know how they're thinking, how they would relate to a problem that I would have. Like if somebody else had a problem and I had the exact same problem, I would be thinking of it differently. And so you can't assume that that's the case, that you think the same way. And so again, I try to give them the tools and resources and feedback and experience and that sort of thing, and let them figure out for themselves what the best course of action is.
So diversity, equity, and inclusion is a topic that a lot of businesses and communities are talking about right now. Can you tell us about your experience with that and how you prioritize that in your campaign?
Sure. So, I'll go way back. So I was born in South Africa and I grew up during apartheid. And so my family left South Africa 100% because of that. And so I do have a bit of an understanding of how impactful being left out can be. I mean, obviously not directly, but because of that. And then, my background, ethnically, I'm Jewish. And so people don't appreciate in Edmonton, for example, I'll use a story. If you go to synagogue in Edmonton, which I don't very often, I'm not that religious, but when I do go, the Jewish community has to hire police. Every big holiday for the last 50 years I've lived in Edmonton, we hire police and they're at the front door and the back door. And so people might understand that and not find that a bit surprising. And so I kind of use that example just to sort of demonstrate that I do have a little bit of a feel for what it's like to be a minority, not visible. So I get that's a big difference, but I do understand that. And I think it's really important to allow, of course, allow is the wrong word. It's important to ensure that people of all diversity backgrounds have the same opportunity as everybody else. When I was at City Council last term, I also I learned to understand the value of having diversity in order to make decisions, the right decisions, the best decisions. If you have a group of people and they all come from the same background, they all have the same, view of the world, you're going to get a decision that's based on that. But if you have a group of people that are very much come from different backgrounds, it could be different ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic, gender, doesn't matter, but just a bunch of different diverse backgrounds. They have different perspectives of the world, and ultimately the group is going to come up with a much better decision. And so I think it's very important that in all walks of life, politics, business, nonprofit, friends, everything, having a group of diverse people around you ends up being a best decision. You just get a better appetite for the world. So it's very important to me.
Yeah, I think telling stories about the synagogue like you did, those are stories that people can connect to so easily, and more importantly, remember them, so that it does stay top of mind, and it's something that they can, leverage and employ in their own lives. If you were elected, what would be some of the steps that you would take to put Edmonton into a firmer financial footing? And what do you think are our biggest financial challenges of the city?
The city has? Sure. So, by the way, it's when I'm elected, not if. I always have to say that. My team tells me. The city, this is a really pivotal time for the city. And this is the first time in a generation that we don't know where our social and economic successes are going to come from. And we have a ton of fiscal pressure on the city of Edmonton. We've got levels of government that have when I say no money, I know the federal government can always get more money. But really, they're going to be in a tough spot. Our provincial government's in a really tough spot. We have I'll say a weak economy in Alberta. And then the city of Edmonton's in a very tough spot. And it's all, a lot of it's because of COVID, but not exclusively. And so there's just going to be less resources for everyone to spend money on, and we've got to take care of people that need it. And so in order to take care of people that need some help, and in order to undertake all of our infrastructure priorities, and to spend the money that a municipality does, we're going to have to be really careful, and we're going to have to say no to some things and make some really tough choices. The city government has also been growing quite extensively over the last few years. When I left City Council in 2017, the budget was 2.7 billion, the operating budget, and now it's 3.1. The city hasn't grown that much in 4 years, and we keep spending more and more money. And so we really are going to have to reel that in and focus on the municipal level government services that municipal level governments should be providing first and foremost. And then if there's time and money and resources left, we can expand on that. But we really have to deal with this economic crisis that we're in and make sure that businesses can get back opening and thriving, and people can get jobs and work and be able to support families and our community and make contributions economically. With only a strong economy can we then do a good job supporting people that need help. And so we really need to get the city on a better financial footing.
Perfect. What would you say are the highest priority social challenges facing Edmonton, very related to fiscal in so many ways?
Yeah, the homeless population is in downtown Edmonton, well, downtown and the rest of Edmonton, but obviously mostly downtown, has grown by over 1,000 people during COVID. So it's gone from about 1,500 to 2,500, more or less. So it's 1,000 people, but it's also a high percentage of growth. And so we have a lot to do around the homeless population, affordable housing and services. And some people need some, temporary help, and some people are going to need wraparound, addiction, mental health services for the rest of their life, and housing, of course. And so we've got to deal with that very complex problem from the people that need a bit of help to the people that are really need a lot of help. So we have to deal with that. There's still lots of people, unfortunately, even in Edmonton, like a city like Edmonton, that live in poverty or near poverty, and they need help, and especially out of COVID, there's lots of families that are having some challenges, or single parents. And so there's with all these kind of issues, there's others, but with all these kind of issues, there's addiction issues, and we know that's a big problem as well. People literally dying, more people dying from that than COVID last year. So we have to deal with that. But with all these challenges, I very much come from a practical approach. I get very frustrated that we've been talking about these things for a long time and not really doing enough practically. And so we've got some very specific programs that we've announced and that we're going to be announcing that's going to address a lot of these issues. We've got after school programming, for example, that we announced that we're going to open up rec centers and soccer centers and for kids after school, any kid under 18. And not only does that double as recreation for kids, that some of these kids have never they've never been on a sports team. They've never been to a rec center. They don't have a car. Their parents can't afford it. There's no one to take them. And so we've got this program that we can do it for relatively very little money. And it also doubles as childcare for the families that need it. And we can include transportation to the 100 highest need schools. And this is all for a really relative small amount of money for what that program can impact the city. And so there's things like that we're doing that are going to really make a difference for families that need help specifically. Yeah.
Perfect. And what would you say is your top priority overall? We talked about so many things today. What would you say you would want people to walk away with as a nugget? What is your top priority?
Well, getting the city back economically and getting downtown back is vital. We got to keep tax rates. I've committed to a decrease in property tax over the next 4 years. So we've got to get people some help economically, and then we've got to deal with all the social challenges that I heard. At the same time, we've got to make sure that the city is still growing and vibrant and an interesting place to live, so we can attract people to move here and make sure that the younger generation wants to stay here, and seniors have a high quality of life as the rest of us do as well. And so in order to do that, you've got to do a whole bunch of things right. You got to make sure that we've got a world-class education system from zero to whatever, which we do. You got to make sure our housing stock is reasonably priced, that there's like cool, interesting things to do in the River Valley, and festivals and restaurants and downtown and in White Avenue and areas like that are vibrant, and that the economy is strong so people can work or start a new business. And then we have to take care of people that need help. And so there's a whole bunch of little things that we need to do, and we need to do it well, practically and focused, which I'll argue hasn't been the case. And so we've got a lot of work to do, and we don't have a lot of money to do all that stuff. So there's going to be some tough choices and tough decisions that we're going to have to make. And I'm quite confident we can do that, but we got a lot of heavy lifting ahead of us.
Perfect. Would there be anything else that you want our community to walk away with today that we didn't cover?
I talked, the economy is important. The helping people that need help is really important. And we've still got to do some interesting things in the city. We've got an interesting plan for Rossdale to finally have a place, in the power plant building and down in West Rossdale where people can have a cup of coffee and go for a walk with their family or relatives in the River Valley and, have a glass of wine. So we still need to keep building some cool, interesting things in the city, and, keep expanding the city physically, but also culturally. And so, I think when you put that all together, we've got a pretty good plan of dealing with the challenges that we've got, but still growing the city and doing some really interesting, cool things in the city. And so I'm pretty excited about what's in store. It's an amazing place to live. Everyone's, we've got problems. Every city's got problems, but the city's been great to me and my family. And since we moved here all those years ago, many, many years ago, and I want to make sure that everyone has the same or better opportunities and experience as I have had.
Well, you mentioned that you're excited, and that definitely comes through just how much you do care about the city, which is great. Thank you, Michael, again so much for your time today. It was great learning about your leadership style and more about your values.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure, of course.
Okay, bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.